But Ryan Day came out today and said that Julian Sayin and Lincoln, I cannot say the last name. Do it.
Kienholz.
I keep saying Kienholz.
I think it's Kienholz.
I know. It's my fault. But Lincoln Kienholz, see, I did it, and you even told me the name. Regardless, both of them are quote-unquote neck on neck. He did say that Tavian Sinclair has the longest to go at the current moment, but his speed is unreal. When you hear Ryan Day talk about the quarterback battle that has gone on this spring, what are your initial thoughts about what you hear, what you think, what you see?
This is one of those things where I'd really like to see how the spring game looks. And this is going to be one of those spring games that I pay super close attention to because I want to see if there is a separation that's not being described. I think back to last year, and we recorded a video on this about how Devin Brown was being described as looking fantastic in practice, and there was not much separation between Will Howard and Devin Brown. That was not like the direct descriptor, but like all we kept hearing was about how Devin Brown was closing the gap. And we all knew that that wasn't true. We entertained the thought, but we knew that Will Howard was going to start. We knew that Will Howard was the better option, and the rest is history. They won a national championship with him. I'm feeling like that's what this situation is. I think that Ryan Day, who talked about Tavian Sinclair, who's super dynamic, and he has a very high upside, knows that if in a circumstance where Julian Sayin goes down with an injury, he can't really rely on Sinclair as a true freshman who has been described as extremely raw, but very talented. He needs to do whatever he can to keep Lincoln Kienholz. Thank you for Hummus Hero for pointing that out in the chat. By the way, also thanks to him for pointing out everybody to hit that like button. Kienholz, he needs him to keep him around to have a really good backup quarterback. In case anything happens with Julian Sayin, if you do not have a good backup quarterback, you will be screwed. There are not a lot of options that you can go and get right now unless you find a sitting backup on another team that's willing to take money to also sit and be a backup, or you dipped into the FCS ranks and took a starter and gave him a shit ton of money to sit on the bench. Like, I feel like that this specifically is a circumstance where Ryan Day is trying to prevent a departure, knowing how frequently this happens and how long Kienholz has been there, that he would like to go get an opportunity to start somewhere. So
I agree with what you're saying. In reference to this situation. So Kienholz, Lincoln Kienholz, and Julian Sayin. Joe, I don't think that here's my opinion. So last year you went into a season, if you're Ryan Day, and you did have Brown, you did have Kyle McCord still technically, but you moved on from him because you knew that you could go somewhere else and get a quarterback. They went and got Walker Howard. Julian Sayin has been there for a year, and Aaron Nolan left. Why didn't Aaron Nolan leave? Because he probably was told what? That he's probably not going to start or play there, and something happened. Why would he leave if he was not going to get the chance to be the starting quarterback at the school that he initially went to? This screams to me Julian Sayin. It screams to me exactly what you're saying in reference to that you think that St. Clair is not up to where, God forbid something happened to Julian Sayin, that you need somebody that you think that can be serviceable if, God forbid, a situation happens that he went down. The actions are always going to speak louder than words ever will. The Aaron Nolan transfer for me solidifies who won that battle. And then, Joe, why would they go out into the portal last year and get a quarterback only not to do it this one? There's one thing about Ryan Day. He's going to get good quarterback play. I don't care what Kyle McCord. Like, Kyle McCord was fine. If that's your floor, then God bless Captain America. If that's the floor, then good on it. The reason Aaron Nolan leaves, the reason that they don't go in the portal and get somebody else is because they have faith in this kid. I'm just not buying at all that Kienholz is, for what it's worth, even in the running. Now, I do think they'll split reps. I think that they'll do whatever they got to do. I think this is Julian Sayin's to lose, and it's not to say that they can't, but here's the thing that I will throw out there. At the end of the press conference, Ryan Day said this. Look, you guys were out there. He was talking to me. Look, you guys were out there Saturday. What do you think? It's not like I don't think
that answer.
It's
good
not,
answer. It's just like you guys figure it out.
exactly. Well, but he finished it up by saying this. I do expect someone to take a massive leap this week, and that guy taking first team reps.
I think the most important part about
Come on.
Right. I mean, he's got somebody in mind. I really do think, though, even if he does go on to announce a starter at the end of the spring, I don't think that's a good idea for the exact reason that we just talked about here. Yes, it will put confidence in Julian Sayin, and that Julian Sayin will feel really great going into the summer, but you can't risk losing Lincoln Kienholz. You just can't risk losing him. It is the same circumstance with Devin Brown. Devin Brown was there for multiple years. There was always talks about how great of an athlete he was and some of the potential that he had. If he had transferred and gone somewhere else, probably could have started. But having a guy that is dynamic and is experienced and been around the program is extremely valuable for your backup quarterback. In the history of the sport before the transfer portal, having guys that were around for a very long time was always important for some of the biggest programs going on national championship runs in case their starter went down. So losing Kienholz, again, they can't allow for him to think that he's losing this quarterback battle. I would keep the reps as even as possible up until the end of, that last 3 weeks of camp. Like after the first week and a half of camp, if you really feel that confident saying, then turn it over. But I wouldn't do it before the summer. And I don't think that Ryan Day will, knowing his track record.
Yeah, knowing his track record, he won't. He'll throw both of them out there with the first unit.
Wait. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. Well, look even further back, the Devin Brown, Kyle McCord instance. Forgotten about that.
Devin Brown. If you remember in the spring game, Devin Brown started with the ones. It was not Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. But here's the thing. Here's the caveat that I threw at you then, and I'll throw at you now. Here's the opposite risk of that. Every rep that Devin Brown took, Kyle McCord didn't get. So
that's a good point.
I listen. What are you in the business of? Are you in the business of developing players, or are you in the business of making sure that you just don't lose games? You cannot go into a season scared that Julian Sayin's gonna get hurt. You can't do that. And if he does, well, St. Clair's there, and well, you got a hell of a coaching job that you got to do. Listen, when you have a young quarterback, and it's of my opinion that every rep counts, spring or not. Now, Hummus Hero in the chat says, I don't think Ryan ever named a starter before fall camp, even with Justin Fields, who was completely obvious. I'm with Hummus on that. I'm with you on that. I don't think he's going to do it. But there is a caveat when you're splitting first-team reps. Julian Sayin's still not getting those reps. And listen, the last thing I'd say here, offensively, you got absolute weapons at receiver, absolute dogs. The guy that can throw the ball the best, regardless of what we think, is Julian Sayin. He gives you the best upside to win these games. That's where I'm going to lean here.
I agree with you on that part. Both guys have tools to work with. Julian Sayin has been described as the more natural player among the two, and I think that he's going to have the higher impact. We've only heard really positive reviews on Julian Sayin. That's what all the whispers always are. I feel like I haven't really heard anything about Lincoln Kienholz, and that's not a shot at him, but you would think that if there was a more realistic competition here, and if Kienholz had an actual capability to start, there would be some oh man, he's killing it at practice right now. I feel like that doesn't show up in those reports.